Chapter 1: Shattered Glass. My name is Jack Morgan, 41 years old, and the past 9 years I've commanded a unit that doesn't exist in any military records. Now I co-own a lingerie boutique with my wife Vivian, a 28-year-old goddess I married after pulling her from a nightmare in the Pakistani mountains. I always understood her feelings for me were tangled with gratitude, but my selfishness was too profound to refuse what she offered. The Velvet Secret occupied a converted Victorian mansion downtown, its burgundy awnings and wrought iron balconies whispering promises of forbidden delights. A silver bell sang as the door opened. I raised my eyes from the ledger and acknowledged the familiar couple, our regular clients. Mr. and Mrs. Davidson, always a pleasure. I manufactured a smile that passed for genuine. 9 years in black ops taught me to sculpt my expressions like a master forger counterfeiting emotion. Jack, Patricia Davidson beamed. Vivian showed us this new corset design that she says will drive Thomas absolutely wild. Her husband, owner of a pharmaceutical empire, cleared his throat awkwardly. I'd always appreciated the Davidsons. They belonged to that rare breed of wealthy who still saw service staff as human beings. "She's in the fitting room," I nodded toward the main salon. "Sophie will escort you." Our receptionist, a petite redhead with dancer's posture, materialized beside the clients. I returned to the numbers. They refused to align properly, which scraped against my nerves like sandpaper. Not that we lacked money, quite the opposite. The boutique flourished. Too much, honestly. Our profit margins outpaced the other luxury intimate apparel shops by astronomical proportions. The official explanation lived in our exclusive fabrics and custom tailoring. But I understood economics well enough to smell something rotting beneath the silk. "You're looking especially handsome today, Ethan." Vivian's husky voice drifted from the entrance. I looked up. My brother stood at the door, Ethan Morgan. Our parents must have been drunk on the same name when they christened us. No other explanation for why we ended up nearly identical monikers. "Just dropping by to check on my favorite relatives." Ethan embraced Vivian, his hands lingering on her waist beyond propriety's borders, then approached me. "How's the empire, bro?" I stood to embrace him. 2 inches shorter but moving with that infuriating grace. Ethan had always radiated more charisma, what our father labeled magnetic pull. Mother claimed he could sweet-talk a cobra. I managed without such talents. Bare hands sufficed for strangling snakes. 7 methods for vipers, 9 for cobras. "Your wife looks absolutely devastating in that silk." Ethan lowered his voice. "She's absolutely devastating, period. Lucky bastard." "I'm aware." I watched Vivian helping Nadia, our master seamstress, arrange samples from the new collection. My wife truly was breathtaking. At 28, she could pass for 23. Honey blonde hair to her shoulders, always perfectly styled, eyes the color of storm clouds before lightning strikes, a figure carved by angels. Flawless makeup and manicure, even while handling fabrics. Vivian perpetually appeared ready for a Vogue photo shoot. "How's that zoning nightmare progressing?" I asked, recalling his mentions of permit troubles for the new office complex. Ethan grimaced. "Same bureaucratic prick blocking everything, but I'll handle it, don't worry." He glanced around. "Speaking of which, where's your VIP sanctuary? Thinking of bringing some business partners next week. They need special gifts for the wives." "Third door on the right," I nodded, "but right now." Too late. Ethan was already moving toward the indicated door. "Vivian," he called, "won't you show me these new treasures for our special clients?" My wife excused herself from Nadia and followed my brother. They vanished behind the VIP suite door. I returned to the books, trying to exorcise the unpleasant sensation of Ethan's hungry gaze devouring my wife. Competition had always poisoned our brotherhood. The eternal story, elder versus younger. Ethan was cleverer, slicker, more charming. I was stronger, more determined, more focused. Father, ex-military himself, constantly held me up as the example. It drove Ethan to madness. I remembered perfectly how we both fell for Vivian almost simultaneously. Ethan found himself chasing for once, and the role didn't suit him. When Vivian chose me, it struck him like a sledgehammer. Several months of cold distance, then suddenly he offered peace, declaring blood matters more than hormones. I accepted. Now, after 5 years, I wondered, had his retreat been merely strategic? "Mr. Morgan," Sophie's voice extracted me from my brooding. "That jeweler next door is asking again about additional security. Third break-in this month. Tell him I'll contact the security company next week." But Sophie lingered, nervously twisting her bracelet. "He says he spotted someone suspicious studying our doors last night. Maybe we should." "Thank you, Sophie," I cut her off. "I'll handle it." She nodded and returned to her station. I made a note in my planner. Additional protection did merit consideration, especially given our clientele's nature. Aye. 32 cameras for a boutique spanning barely 3,000 square feet. The technician whistled through his teeth. "Either you're paranoid or storing the crown jewels." "Let's say I have experience in security matters." I sipped my coffee. "I want 0 blind spots." "What about fitting rooms?" he asked diplomatically. "Usually we avoid equipment there for privacy reasons." "Standard fitting rooms don't need them," I nodded. "But the VIP suite, valuable items often sit unattended there. Install them discreetly. Don't worry, I have the owner's consent." Technically true, I co-owned the boutique with Vivian. Her ignorance about VIP cameras remained a separate issue. Fortress Security held the reputation as the city's finest. They serviced the jewelry store next door, confirming their caliber. They worked swiftly, the entire system installed in one day. "Demo access is live." The technician handed me a tablet with the installed app. "All cameras viewable in real time. Recording begins at midnight. Archive stored for 60 days. I verified, scrolling through camera feeds. "Yes, as requested. Longer storage requires additional cloud fees." He packed his tools, checking his watch. "Mr. Morgan, we've completed everything. Call anytime with questions." I signed the completion form and saw him out. The boutique had closed, but Nadia lingered, finishing a rush order. She waved from the far corner, bent over a translucent bustier. "Don't stay too late, Nadia," I called. "Lock up when you're done." "Of course, Mr. Morgan, almost finished." I stepped outside where Vivian waited, elegant even after a full workday. "Camera's done," she took my arm. "Ethan thinks it's wasting money. Nothing ever happens here." "Tell that to the jewelers next door," I shrugged. "Besides, after that aggressive customer incident." Vivian winced, remembering the unpleasant scene from 2 weeks ago. A drunk man had burst in demanding refunds for defective lingerie that tore during first use. He'd screamed, waved his arms, nearly struck Sophie trying to calm him. I'd intervened. 1 second to assess, 3 more to grab, lock, and escort him out. Nobody hurt except the troublemaker's pride. But I remembered fear in Vivian's eyes. "You're still paranoid," she lightly touched the scar on my cheek. "But I like it, you worry about me." "Of course I worry," I pulled her close. "You're my most precious possession." We dined at the Italian place across the street, discussing weekend plans. Vivian wanted to visit our country house, built with my combat bonuses. I agreed, though I preferred the city, easier to control the environment. Paranoia? Perhaps, but it had saved my life repeatedly. We returned home just after 9. Vivian headed straight for the shower while I opened the security app on my tablet. Cameras worked perfectly. I saw the empty retail floor, storage areas, corridors, checkout zone, and basement stockroom. The VIP suite glowed with ambient lighting. Strange. I tapped the image, enlarging it. Motion-activated recording had triggered automatically. Someone occupied the VIP suite after closing. Maybe Nadia checking orders, or Sophie forgetting something. I reviewed the recording and froze. Vivian and my brother. They'd entered the VIP suite at 7:15, 15 minutes after official closing. Ethan pressed my wife against the wall, kissing her neck. She tilted her head back, eyes half closed. No audio in the system, but I read lips expertly, another useful military habit. "Did you serve as Judge Preston today?" Ethan asked. "Yes, as you requested. Recorded everything," Vivian replied. "Good girl, he already signed the necessary papers. Now it's my turn for special service." I watched my brother take possession of my wife on the velvet sofa in our family boutique's VIP suite, and ice filled my veins. Surveillance of infidelity, unpleasant business. I'd witnessed such scenes through sniper scopes, terrorist wives betraying absent militant husbands. We never reported it, just silently observed the interesting scenes that helped pass long surveillance hours. But one thing was watching strangers' wives in distant Pakistan. Quite another, your own, in your business with your brother. The strange conversation about Judge Preston troubled me more. I knew he ranked among our biggest clients, ordered expensive lingerie for his wife, came personally, often staying for private consultations with Vivian. What did recorded everything mean, and which necessary papers had the judge signed? The shower's sound returned me to reality. I powered off the tablet and locked it in the safe. Despite the shock, I thought clearly. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Morgan, commander of the Ghost Unit, couldn't afford emotional reactions. The situation demanded additional intelligence. Aye. A week passed since camera installation. A week that altered my perception of reality. I staged no scenes, neither with Vivian nor Ethan, behaved normally. Smiled at clients, kissed my wife mornings, discussed city news with my brother. But nights I reviewed camera footage. This week Vivian conducted special consultations with 5 VIP clients. All men, all influential city figures. Judge Preston was merely one. Police Chief Williams also visited, construction magnate Harrison, newspaper editor Reynolds, and Mayor Collins. With each, Vivian discussed matters far beyond lingerie selection. Watching these recordings convinced me my wife had mastered the seduction arts flawlessly. She presented herself uniquely to each man. With Judge Preston, innocent creature needing protection. With the police chief, wanton temptress. With the construction magnate, stern businesswoman willing to let go. Each consultation ended with continuation, if you understand my meaning. And each, I realized from overheard conversations, was recorded on hidden cameras the clients never suspected. I discovered this equipment on day 3, thoroughly examining the VIP suite. Miniature camera in the eye of an antique porcelain doll perched on the fabric sample shelf. Transmitter hidden beneath the sofa. Professional work, matching military specifications. "You look exhausted," Vivian observed at breakfast when I drifted into thought again. Nightmares returning. "Somewhat," I lied. "Everything's fine." With Ethan, Vivian met thrice this week. Their encounters differed from client sessions. More passion, more honesty. I didn't know what cut deeper, the betrayal or that with my brother my wife was genuine. With him she didn't play roles. From their conversations, I learned more than desired. "Think he suspects anything?" Ethan asked, stroking Vivian's bare shoulder. "Jack," she chuckled, too busy reliving his heroic exploits to notice what's happening under his nose. "I still don't understand why you chose him over me, back then." "Because he saved me, Ethan. I owed him my life, and debts must be repaid. I killed the recording, too painful, so Vivian chose me from obligation, and I'd imagined I'd won her heart. Still, this now mattered less. Most importantly, I began understanding the scope. My wife and brother ran a blackmail ring targeting city influentials, using our boutique as cover. Now those conversations about signed papers made sense, the disproportionate income, certain clients' strange behavior, and why my brother suddenly succeeded in landing city contracts. One question remained: what next? Normal people would call police, but the police chief himself was compromised, and the military taught me one crucial principle: before attacking, know every detail of enemy positions. IV. God damn it, escaped my lips. I'd endured watching my wife's infidelity, could accept her liaisons with other men, but my brother, Ethan, was the final straw. Seeing my younger brother rutting with my wife on the sofa I'd purchased with bonuses for eliminating a Taliban commander was almost physically painful. But I couldn't tear away from the screen. "We're risking too much," Vivian said, buttoning her blouse. "He could return any moment." "Relax, he said he'd be at the bank until 6, Ethan stretched lazily. "Besides, I enjoy the risk. You do too, admit it." "I enjoy the money we're making, not the risk itself." "There you go again. I told you, after selling the mayor's compromising material, we'll have enough that you can forget these entertainments. If you don't screw up like last time." "Hey, everything went perfectly with the judge," Ethan jerked as if slapped. "He signed all the construction permits for the North District. And Collins, the mayor's been dodging our calls for a week. He clearly suspects something." "Let him try anything," Ethan's voice hardened. "We have enough material to destroy his career, marriage, and reputation. He's going nowhere." I shut off the recording and leaned back. Mayor Collins, outwardly impeccable family man, model politician who kissed bobbies publicly and slashed kindergarten budgets in closed sessions. From overheard conversations I knew his weakness: young women he preferred dressed in schoolgirl uniforms. Revolting, but apparently legal, all girls were over 18. Still, such preferences could end a mayor's career. Apparently, Ethan and Vivian first lured him to the boutique with promises of special services, then began blackmailing, and the mayor was resisting, unusual for my brother's victims. I wondered, how deep was Ethan entangled in this scheme? He'd always been a clever manipulator, but from blackmail to more serious crimes, one step. And from what I'd seen, he seemed ready to take that step. I rewound the recording. Ethan and Vivian now discussing business. "Nadia's asking too many questions," Vivian said. "She saw me escorting clients through the back door, asked why we don't use the main entrance." "Fire her." "Can't. She's the best seamstress, and without her we can't maintain the high-end boutique cover. Plus Jack would notice." Jack, Ethan mocked. "Always Jack. You know, sometimes I think, wouldn't it be simpler to just eliminate the heroic brother? Unfortunate accident, domestic injury." "Don't even think about it." Vivian jumped up. "Jack doesn't deserve that. He's a good man and my legal husband after all." "But you chose me," Ethan smiled smugly. "I didn't choose you. You blackmailed me." "What?" I rewound, thinking I'd misheard. "But no, you blackmailed me." Vivian pronounced it clearly, looking Ethan straight in the eye. "Oh, come on," he waved dismissively. "I just showed you how to profit from high society connections. You decided it was a brilliant idea yourself. After you threatened to tell Jack about my past, about what happened in captivity, and about my father." I tensed. What past? What happened in captivity I didn't know, and what about her father? "We both know your grateful rescue story isn't the whole truth." Ethan approached Vivian from behind, embracing her shoulders. "If Jack knew what really happened in that cave, what you really felt toward your captors, and who your father was, he wouldn't have accepted you so nobly." "You're a monster, Ethan." "I'm a businessman, and I still have photos I took in your apartment before you met Jack. Remember the wrist scars. Remember what you wrote in your diary about captivity." Vivian remained silent, lips compressed into a thin line. "So let's skip the outraged scenes," Ethan continued. "We both get what we want. I control half the city contracts. You get money and respected businesswoman status. And Big Brother stays blissfully ignorant." I shut off the recording, feeling something new mix with cold rage, regret, pity. Vivian wasn't just an adulteress but a blackmail victim, and in this scheme she was also a pawn. What really happened in captivity? I remembered how Vivian reluctantly discussed those days, limiting herself to vague phrases. "They didn't torture me, I was lucky," all she'd said. I knew about Stockholm Syndrome, how hostages sometimes sympathize with captors. Was this sympathy something more? And what photos had Ethan taken? Questions multiplied without answers. One thing I knew certainly: my brother was far more dangerous than I'd assumed, and the depth of his betrayal extended far beyond intimacy with my wife. I spent 2 hours in our home gym, methodically destroying the punching bag with strikes honed through years of training. With each blow, each drop of sweat rolling down my spine, I gained mental clarity. Combat planning had always been my strength. I visualized the situation as a tactical problem. Objective: gather maximum intelligence on the enemy, neutralize threats, minimize casualties. Enemy, brother and wife. Resources: military training, contacts among former comrades, personal savings. Goal: expose the full scope of the criminal scheme and, then what? Turn them over to authorities, destroy the scheme, or simply vanish, leaving them to face consequences. I didn't know, but one thing was clear: before deciding, I needed all information. Over following days, I meticulously constructed the picture. On a separate laptop secured from external access, I created a database of all boutique special clients. For each: name, position, weaknesses, visit frequency, estimated bribe or service size. I paid special attention to Mayor Collins. Of all clients, he seemed most vulnerable yet most valuable to Ethan. Recently, he'd appeared especially nervous. Cameras showed him sweating, constantly glancing around, flinching at every sound during his last visit. I traced his roots, habits, contacts. The mayor visited a therapist twice weekly, frequented church, unusual for a politician of his level, barely spent time with family. Classic signs of a man under pressure. My second surveillance target became my brother. I planted a tracker on his car. Former comrades could procure anything for reasonable payment. Hacked his home Wi-Fi through a neighboring apartment I'd rented under false identity. Ethan was smarter than I'd estimated. He didn't store compromising material at home or office only, on a protected server accessible through special encryption. But even geniuses can't control everything. From overheard conversations, I learned original recordings were stored on encrypted flash drives Ethan kept in a bank safety deposit box as server backup. Vivian proved less cautious. In her planner, once forgotten on the kitchen table, I found a list of all special client meetings for the coming month. Names had notations: forced signing for development in protected zone, for ecology department head; block embezzlement investigation, for Judge Preston; secure city road repair contract, for deputy mayor. The picture gradually crystallized. Ethan had built a blackmail empire, using my wife's sexual services as tools for gathering compromising material. This material then manipulated officials for contracts, permits, privileges. Simple and effective scheme, operating for years. But why risk so much with the mayor? From conversations, I understood Ethan was preparing some major deal requiring Collins' personal approval, and the mayor clearly resisted despite blackmail. Perhaps millions were at stake, maybe tens of millions. Collins was the key to the entire puzzle. I decided to focus on him. Thursday evening, Vivian announced she'd be late. Problems with Italian lace shipment. I knew she actually had an appointment with Mayor Collins, who, according to camera records, had ordered another fitting. Perfect opportunity for surveillance. I parked a nondescript gray sedan, rented under false identity, 2 blocks from the boutique. The trunk held telephoto camera, night vision device, and surveillance kit, standard tools for a modern paranoid or abandoned husband. Take your pick. At 9:17 p.m., the mayor left the boutique. He looked pale even under warm streetlight glow, nervously glancing around, constantly checking his phone. He got into a black SUV with tinted windows and pulled away, immediately violating two traffic laws exiting the parking spot. I followed, maintaining safe distance. Urban surveillance, the art of remaining invisible in traffic flow while tracking the target. I'd done this in countries where the slightest mistake meant death, so tracking a nervous politician in my hometown felt almost recreational. The mayor's SUV turned onto the suburban highway. Half an hour later, we reached the gates of Forest Heights, 20 mansions behind high walls with round-the-clock security. I knew Colin's house sat deep within this paradise for the wealthy. Leaving my car at a nearby shopping center, I crossed the wooded area separating the development from the outside world. The perimeter was well protected: cameras, motion sensors, regular patrols. But every system has weaknesses. Here, the food delivery flow regularly circulating through the main gates. I donned a delivery service jacket lifted from a restaurant dumpster, intending to return it later naturally, clipped on a fake badge, and grabbed a pizza bag. The gate guard barely glanced before waving me through. The mayor's house, three-story colonial mansion with white columns and perfectly trimmed hedges, embodied the American dream architecturally. I positioned myself in the neighboring hedge shadows, observing through a camera with infrared lens. At 10:40 p.m., a nondescript black sedan stopped at Colin's house. My brother emerged, carrying a small metal briefcase. He wore that self-satisfied smile I'd known since childhood, the smile of someone getting what they wanted. Collins personally let him in. The meeting lasted only 15 minutes. Through the large living room windows, I saw Ethan hand the mayor a small package, presumably a flash drive. In return, he received the briefcase, which he immediately opened. Even from my position, I could see stacks of cash inside. My brother seemed satisfied. He nodded, closed the case, and headed for the exit. The mayor escorted him to the door, then returned to the living room. Through the driver's window, I saw Ethan make a phone call while sitting in his car. Judging by the conversation length, a brief phrase, perhaps "it's done" or similar. Then he drove away. I remained observing the mayor's house. Something in his behavior made me wary. He didn't look like a man who just bought off a blackmailer, more like someone who'd made a difficult decision. And I was right. An hour later, lights began going out, first upstairs, then in the living room. Only the first-floor study remained lit. I shifted position for a better view. The mayor sat at his desk, writing something on paper. Finishing, he carefully folded the sheet and sealed it in an envelope. Then he opened a desk drawer and removed a pistol, checked the magazine, worked the slide, released the safety. "Shit," I muttered, understanding what was about to happen. I sprinted toward the house but knew I wouldn't make it in time. Through the camera sight, I saw the mayor raise the pistol to his temple. A second's hesitation, deep breath, closed eyes. Then flash and a dark stain on the wall behind him. Alarm sirens wailed about 30 seconds later. I quickly retreated through the neighboring property, crossed the woods, and returned to my car. Adrenaline pulsed in my temples, but my thinking remained cold and clear. I just witnessed the mayor's suicide, and possibly understood why Ethan had rushed to collect money. He knew Collins was on the edge, and hurried to squeeze out whatever he could. Chapter 2: Ashes of Truth. Death often catalyzes the exposure of life's hidden mechanisms. After the mayor's suicide, my hunt transformed from personal vengeance into something far greater. I knew well that between the moment a man pulls the trigger and the photograph of a smiling politician in a memorial frame labeled "died suddenly of heart failure" lies an entire world of manipulation, power, and control. Someone desperately needed to ensure Colin's true cause of death remained secret. And I intended to discover exactly who. The cordon around Colin's mansion lifted after 2 days. I monitored this from the same sedan, from the same position by the shopping center. Police cars departed one by one. The medical examiner's van had long since removed the body. Several times I saw detectives, photographers, and forensic experts entering and exiting the house. Official investigation. Official and completely fabricated. Returning home, I turned on local news. The anchor spoke with genuine sorrow about the untimely passing of one of our state's most promising politicians. Beside him sat the city's chief medical examiner, explaining with a gentle smile that death resulted from acute cardiac failure due to stress, a common problem among workaholics. The same medical examiner who, according to our camera recordings, had visited the boutique twice last month for special fittings. Tragic, isn't it? Vivian stood in the living room doorway, arms crossed over her chest. He always seemed so healthy. Appearances can deceive, I looked up from the screen. You, for instance, appear saddened. Something flickered in her eyes, fear, suspicion. I am saddened, Jack. Mayor Collins was our client, a regular client. Yes, I nodded. Unusual man. Constantly ordered lingerie, but his wife never appeared for fittings. Strange, don't you think? Vivian remained silent, studying my face with that wariness a predator uses to assess potential threats. We were both playing the same game, testing waters, trying to understand what the opponent knew. He was a private person, his position demanded it, she finally answered. Perhaps he was embarrassed by his tastes. Or perhaps afraid, I shrugged. What do you think, Vivian, did he have reasons to fear? Now I was almost certain, fear flashed in her eyes, but only for a second. Years of practice had made my wife a first-class actress. Why are you asking? She approached, sitting on the sofa, placing her hand on my shoulder. Jack, you've been acting strange lately. Did something happen? Her palm on my shoulder felt warm, but I perceived this warmth as something abstract, mechanical. A month ago I would have covered her hand with mine, kissed her fingers, inhaled her wrist's fragrance. Now I only forced my lips' corners to twitch in a conditional smile. Nothing special, just thinking how fragile life is. Today you're the mayor, tomorrow just a line in the obituary. You're viewing life too darkly. Her fingers lightly massaged my neck, that spot that always tensed during missions. Maybe we should go out tonight. Dinner at La Petite Maison. I heard they have a new chef. I have a meeting with the security system vendor, I lied. Wanna update the camera software. After that aggressive customer incident, I can't sleep peacefully. You never sleep peacefully anyway, her voice carried almost genuine concern. Fine, another time then. She left, leaving a trail of French perfume. I noted Vivian hadn't asked what was wrong with the already installed cameras. That was telling. She clearly avoided this topic. Later, reviewing boutique cameras, I noticed Vivian conducted an unscheduled special consultation with Judge Preston. They weren't having sex, just talking, with the judge looking tense and constantly wiping sweat from his forehead. I enlarged the image of his lips, trying to decipher the words. Sure the cameras aren't recording? Preston asked. Vivian nodded, soothingly stroking his hand. Done perfectly, no one will suspect, coroner's conclusion. The judge sighed with relief and handed her an envelope. Now the puzzle was coming together. Judge Preston had apparently organized the falsification of autopsy results. The suicide note vanished, true cause of death concealed. Ethan's influence was far wider than I'd initially assumed. Mayor Collins wasn't just a blackmail victim. He was an example of what happens to those who try resisting the system. Aye. Over the next week I created a complete picture of all boutique special clients' activities. The technique was simple: external surveillance, email access, phone tap monitoring. The latter, of course, bordered on illegality. But when your brother runs a blackmail ring targeting city elites while your wife provides specific services, the concept of legality gains certain flexibility. One evening, checking financial flows, I discovered something that hit me personally. My military pension and business investments, everything I'd put into our joint venture with Vivian, had been skillfully redirected by my brother to offshore accounts. In the Cayman Islands, I suddenly had assets worth just over $1 million I knew nothing about. Ethan wasn't just using my wife. He was using me too, my name, my reputation, my money. The family business turned out to be a front for laundering funds obtained through blackmail and corruption. I sat before the screen, staring at offshore account statements, feeling cold rage growing inside. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was systematic, cold-blooded exploitation of someone my brother should theoretically love and respect. Yet I contained my anger. Military training taught me to control emotions, transforming them into icy determination. I continued playing the role of unsuspecting husband and brother while gathering information about all scheme participants, their weaknesses, pressure points. Information, that was my weapon, and like any weapon, it required proper application. Aye. Mr. Morgan, could I have a moment? Nadia's voice, our seamstress, was quieter than usual. She stood at my office entrance, nervously tugging her blouse hem. Of course, Nadia, come in. I set aside the papers I'd been reviewing. What's wrong? The woman glanced around, as if checking for observers, then closed the door and approached my desk. Real concern showed on her pale face. I don't know if I should say this, she began, lowering her gaze, but I think it's important. It's all right, I indicated a chair. Sit down and tell me what's troubling you. Nadia perched on the chair's edge. She was about 26, had arrived from Eastern Europe 4 years ago. A talented seamstress with golden hands, she created true works of art from lace and silk. Vivian valued her skill, but, I'd noticed, kept her at distance. Nadia was the only employee never invited to our corporate parties. Yesterday I stayed late finishing Mrs. Henderson's rush order, Nadia began. Everyone had left, even Sophie. I was alone. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The workshop ran out of gold thread and I went to storage for a new spool. There's an old mannequin in the corner, usually unused. The woman dropped to a whisper. I accidentally knocked it over and this fell out. Nadia pulled a small flash drive from her pocket. I didn't mean to, really, she added hastily, but I got curious. I plugged it into my laptop. I tensed. If this flash drive contained Ethan's compromising material. And what did you see? Videos, Nadia looked down. Many videos with clients they were, doing things, with Mrs. Morgan. Her cheeks reddened, but not from embarrassment, more from outrage and fear. And Judge Preston was there. I recognized him. He sentenced my cousin to 5 years for a theft he didn't commit. And in the video, the judge, I understand, I interrupted her. No need to make the woman recount details. Nadia, have you shown this flash drive to anyone else? No, she shook her head vigorously. I immediately thought I should bring it to you. You didn't. You didn't know about this, right? I didn't see you in any videos and that's why I decided. Hope shone in her eyes. Hope that the boss she respected wasn't involved in dirty dealings. I felt sorry for her. Nadia was an honest person in a business built on lies. No, I didn't know. I extended my hand. May I? She gave me the flash drive, and I pocketed it. Thank you for telling me. This is serious, and I promise to investigate. But for now, let's keep this between us, all right? For the business's safety and all employees. Of course, Nadia nodded. I won't tell anyone, but this is wrong, what they're doing. It's blackmail, isn't it? It appears so. I looked her straight in the eye. Nadia, be careful. Don't discuss this with anyone, especially Mrs. Morgan or her brother. I'm handling this matter. She stood, still pale but seemingly somewhat calmer. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I knew I could trust you. After she left, I inserted the flash drive into my computer, viewing the contents through a secure connection. There were indeed dozens of videos of special consultations. Judging by file dates, this was an archive from the past 2 months, meaning somewhere existed a whole collection of similar drives with earlier recordings. Something else worried me. Nadia knew too much. In a normal situation, this could be resolved with termination and a non-disclosure agreement, but my brother's scheme extended far beyond regular business. Millions of dollars, reputations of influential people, freedom, and even lives were at stake. I decided to talk with Nadia again tomorrow. Convince her to take vacation, maybe even offer a paid trip home to Europe while I sorted out the situation. But I was too late. IV. I heard the fire siren while returning from surveillance of the police chief. The fiery glow over downtown was visible from afar. As I approached, it grew brighter, and police sirens joined the fire trucks wailing. I didn't immediately realize our boutique was burning. Several businesses occupied the block. But when I turned the corner and saw flames bursting from familiar windows, something broke inside. I parked across the street, watching firefighters battle the blaze. Passers-by filmed on phones. Police cordoned the perimeter, preventing approach to the burning building. Several of our employees huddled in a group nearby. I spotted Sophie, 2 sales associates, the security guard. Jack, the familiar voice made me turn. Vivian ran across the street, her face pale, real terror in her eyes. "Thank God you're here. I was afraid you were inside." She threw herself into my arms, and I automatically embraced her. Body reacted faster than consciousness. 5 years of marriage had created reflexes not easily suppressed. "I was at the suppliers," I answered. "What happened?" "Nobody knows," Vivian sobbed. "Sophie locked up, everyone left. Firefighters say possibly an electrical short." "Was anyone hurt?" She looked away, and I knew the answer before she spoke. "Nadia, she stayed late, working on Mrs. Radford's order." Cold spread through my veins. This couldn't be coincidence. This morning Nadia told me about the flash drive with compromising material. This evening the boutique burns and she's the only victim. "Are you sure?" My voice sounded hoarse. "Maybe she managed to get out." "The firefighters found." Vivian didn't finish the sentence. "They said she likely suffocated from smoke before." I held my wife tighter, looking over her head at the burning building. Inside, cold rage grew. Nadia died because she accidentally learned the truth. Her death wasn't an accident. I was absolutely certain. "How long ago did the fire start?" I asked, pulling back. "About an hour ago. The security company called me." Vivian wiped her tears. "I came immediately, tried calling you." "I was in the mall basement, no signal there," I lied, remembering I'd actually turned off my phone during surveillance of the police chief. "Did you call Ethan?" "Yes, he'll be here soon." She looked at me with some strange mix of emotions. "Jack, what do we do now? All our designs, materials, archives." "Insurance will cover the damage," I answered mechanically, thinking of other things. "The main thing is most people weren't hurt." I scanned the street as if searching for someone, and found them. In the shadow of the opposite building sat a dark sedan with tinted windows, too new and expensive for this neighborhood. In the lowered driver's window, I glimpsed a familiar profile for a second. Ethan watched the fire from afar. Didn't rush to arrive, didn't rush to save his sister's business. Just watched as flames destroyed evidence, as the body of a woman who knew too much burned. At that moment, I understood my brother had crossed a line beyond which no justification exists, and I intended to make him answer for it. Later that night, when we returned home and Vivian, exhausted by stress, fell asleep, I checked Ethan's office through remote access to his surveillance system. Cameras showed him urgently clearing the premises of documents. All folders and files were packed into several large boxes and removed, covering tracks or preparing for something bigger. Either way, the situation had transformed from personal revenge into a question of justice. "Nadia, A 26-year-old refugee who'd found new life in America was killed only for accidentally learning the truth. She left behind a 7-year-old son, now an orphan. I could no longer remain just an observer. Time had come to act. My brother always underestimated my technical skills, considered me just a military killing machine, incapable of understanding modern technology. That was his main mistake. 2 days had passed since the fire. Vivian dealt with insurance issues, talked with police, calmed clients. I offered help, but she refused, saying she'd manage herself. This gave me freedom of action, which I didn't hesitate to use. From the neighboring apartment I'd rented under a false identity, I launched an attack on my brother's encrypted correspondence. The hacking toolkit came from a former comrade, now working for one of those organizations whose existence the government prefers not to confirm. Ethan's encryption was serious, but not military grade. After 6 hours of continuous work, I gained access to his protected email, and what I discovered there exceeded my worst fears. Ethan was preparing a massive auction where he planned to sell all collected compromising material to the highest bidders. Buyers would include political opponents of his victims, business competitors, tabloid publications. Judging by preliminary bids, we were talking millions of dollars per lot. But the main thing, Ethan didn't intend to stop there. After the auction, he planned to disappear, taking all the money, leaving both Vivian and me to deal with consequences. In one email, he mentioned a backup plan for particularly stubborn partners. Whatever this plan was, I doubted it envisioned a long and happy life for Vivian and me. The auction was scheduled in 3 days on the yacht of one Marcos Ventura, a businessman with questionable reputation. The vessel would be taken to international waters, simple way to bypass American jurisdiction. I copied all information about the upcoming event, guest list, yacht schematics, security measures. Ethan was pedantic about details, which worked in my favor. I could prepare for infiltrating this auction with the same thoroughness I'd once planned combat operations. I had 3 days to prepare. During this time, I needed to obtain fake documents, weapons, develop several action plan variants. I also needed to decide what to do about Vivian. She was clearly involved in my brother's scheme, but after the overheard conversation, I began doubting how voluntary her participation was. I closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, rubbing my nose bridge. A plan began forming in my head. I needed to contact people I'd hoped never to cross paths with again, those dwelling in the world's dark corners where issues beyond law were resolved. I pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. After the 5th ring, a gravelly voice answered. "Who is this?" "Ghost." I spoke the code word I hadn't used in 5 years. Pause then. "What the hell do you want, Morgan? I thought you were out." "Marcus, I need help, the kind that leaves no traces." Former Marine Sergeant Marcus Delaney, known in narrow circles as Shadow, specialized in solving delicate problems. We met an hour later in an all-night diner on the city outskirts. "You look like shit," he observed, sliding into the seat across from me. "Family life not agreeing with you." "Need the full package," I ignored his question. "Documents, weapons, surveillance equipment, and disguise." Marcus whistled. "Serious order, feds, IRS." "Personal," I cut him off. He raised his hands defensively. "Hey, just asking your call. When do you need it?" "Within 24 hours, and something else." I leaned closer. "I need information on the yacht Fortune, owner Marcos Ventura." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Ventura? Seriously? That guy's connected to people even we didn't mess with. You sure you want to get into this?" "I'm sure." He shook his head but didn't argue. "Your funeral. I'll contact the right people. This will cost." "Money's not a problem," I interrupted. "Time is the problem." Always in a rush, Morgan, Marcus smirked. Like that operation in Kandahar. Remember, you almost hit a tripwire because of haste. I remembered, and remembered that Marcus had pulled me out then, risking his own skin. We both understood I was still repaying that debt, fulfilling certain requests, turning a blind eye to some of his activities. You'll contact me when everything's ready. As usual, he nodded. And Morgan, be careful, whatever you're planning looks bigger than you think. I knew this without his warnings. The scale of my brother's corruption scheme expanded wider each day. But now something else concerned me. What exactly did Vivian know about the upcoming auction? And what role had Ethan assigned her in this final game? VI. The opportunity to learn the answer came the next day. Returning home earlier than usual, I saw my brother's car in the driveway. Instead of entering through the front door, I used the side entrance, through the garage, quietly, as Special Ops had taught. Voices carried from the living room. I stopped behind the door, listening. He shouldn't know anything. Ethan's voice was tense. If he suspects. Jack won't suspect, Vivian replied. He's too busy with insurance questions and finding new premises. Trust me, I know my husband. You're so sure. What about the cameras he installed in the boutique? Pause then. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, Vivian. I checked the security system after the fire. He installed cameras throughout the boutique, including the VIP suite, and they were operational. Another pause, longer. I didn't know, Vivian's voice wavered. You think he saw? No idea, but if he did, why is he still silent? Ethan chuckled. Maybe our hero brother isn't as simple as he seems. Or he didn't see anything, Vivian said quickly. Jack's a straightforward man. If he'd found out, he would have caused a scene long ago. Either way, we need to accelerate the finale. After the auction, you'll get your share and can disappear. Tell your husband you couldn't handle the stress after the fire, need to rest. And if he wants to come with me, then you'll have a choice. Either tell him the truth and see how he reacts, or, Ethan paused, or rely on my backup plan. Ethan, Vivian's voice sounded strained. You're not thinking what I think you're thinking. What are you thinking? Playful notes appeared in his intonation. Jack's your brother, you can't. I can, if necessary, Ethan cut harshly. But I'd prefer to avoid such extremes. That's why I have a special assignment for you at the auction. I tensed, listening carefully. What assignment? Vivian sounded wary. Federal Prosecutor Stone, the one overseeing the fire investigation. He'll be at the auction. Why would he come there? Because we invited him, Ethan smirked. Through reliable intermediaries. The prosecutor, as it turns out, has a weakness for a certain type of woman, a type you perfectly fit. You want me to seduce a federal prosecutor? The disbelief in Vivian's voice was almost tangible. Not just seduce. You'll conduct a special demonstration of our services with him right during the auction. We need something truly compromising. That's too risky, Ethan. If the FBI... No FBI will be there, he interrupted. Everything's under control. The Coast Guard that might suspect something is on our side. The yacht captain, too. Security will check all guests for weapons and bugs. It'll be absolutely safe. Vivian was silent. I could almost physically feel her internal struggle. And if I refuse? She finally asked. Ethan laughed, but there was no mirth in that laugh. Then I'll be forced to give Jack certain materials about your past, about what really happened in captivity, and about who your father was. You wouldn't dare. Want to test me? His voice turned icy. How do you think your noble husband will react when he learns you're the daughter of the man who ordered 3 of his comrades killed? The very terrorist he was supposed to eliminate during the operation. That you became his wife not out of love or gratitude, but to avenge your father. I froze, feeling blood drain from my face. Vivian, daughter of a terrorist, daughter of the man responsible for my friends' deaths. It was too monstrous to be true, yet it would explain so much. It wasn't like that, Vivian's voice trembled. I genuinely was grateful for the rescue and never wanted revenge. I just got confused. Tell him that, Ethan cut off, if you want to risk it. Heavy pause then. Fine, I'll do it. But after the auction we part ways forever, Ethan. I'll take my share and disappear, without Jack. Sensible decision, self-satisfaction sounded in my brother's voice. Believe me, it'll be better for everyone. You'll be rid of reminders of your mistakes. I'll get my money, and your husband, well, he'll manage. Heroes always manage. I quietly retreated back to the garage, then slipped outside. Got in my car and drove a block away, stopping on the roadside. My hands were shaking. My world had just turned upside down for the second time. I thought I knew the whole truth about my wife and brother's betrayal, but reality proved even more cruel. Vivian hadn't just cheated on me. She'd married me, possibly with the initial intention of avenging her terrorist father, whom I'd eliminated during an operation. The same girl I'd saved, the same hostage for whom my friends had died, the daughter of our target. This explained why her father had suddenly vanished from her stories after our wedding, why she never wanted to discuss her family. But there was another revelation. Vivian was also a blackmail victim. Ethan held her using the threat of revealing the truth about her past, and she feared my reaction so much she preferred participating in his dirty schemes. Did she have a choice? Did I have a choice now? I stared at the road ahead, and a plan gradually crystallized in my mind. The yacht, the auction, the federal prosecutor investigating our boutique fire. Everything converged to one point, like threads pulling toward a web center. I had 2 days to prepare, and I intended to use every minute to be ready for any turn of events. But one thing I knew for certain: no one else would die because of my brother. Not innocent witnesses, not blackmailed officials, not my wife, even if she'd lied to me from the very beginning. Chapter 3: Stormy Waters. There exists a point of no return, a moment when making a decision becomes inevitable. For me, that moment came as I sat in Marcus Shadow Delaney's salon while he transformed me from Lieutenant Colonel Jack Morgan into a Hungarian collector of risque materials. Cold determination filled my mind completely. I was no longer a betrayed husband with a broken heart. I'd become a soldier with a mission. All the preparation, all the years of training returned as if I'd never left service. Nothing remained except the objective and paths to achieve it. The cheekbone contour needs more alteration. Marcus leaned closer, applying silicone prosthetics to my face. This Istvan Kovacs you're becoming should have a more angular jaw. I sat motionless, watching my transformation in the mirror. Now my face resembled a canvas on which an artist step by step created a new person. Did you get what I asked for? I asked, trying not to move my lips. Everything you need is in that case. Marcus nodded toward a metal briefcase in the corner. Documents are flawless. Weapons compact but effective. German Sig Sauer P365 2 magazines. Undetectable by standard metal detectors, composite material body. And communication equipment, including a miniature camera disguised as a cufflink. Also have a tracker, smoke grenades, and a couple other surprises. You always were thorough. And you always were too trusting. Marcus stepped back, evaluating his work. Never thought I'd say this, but I don't think you should go in alone. I can assemble a team. No, I shook my head. This is personal. That's the problem. Marcus wiped his hands with a rag. Personal matters distort judgment. You always taught us to act with a cool head. My head's cool enough. I stood from the chair, stretching stiff muscles. Problems arise when emotions enter the game, and I have none left. The last phrase sounded so lifeless that Marcus froze for a moment, studying my face, then nodded at some private thoughts. You're like the Morgan I knew in Kandahar, the one legend spread about among rookies. He approached a closet and pulled out a dark suit. Try this. Handmade, real Hungarian tailor, Istvan Kovacs wouldn't wear mass production. The suit fit perfectly, as if tailored specifically for me. Marcus added finishing touches, a couple rings on my fingers, gold watch, cane with ivory handle that I suspected concealed some weapon. "Now you're a true European aristocrat with unsavory inclinations," he smirked. "How's the accent?" "No problem," I answered with a heavy Eastern European accent. "I have operational experience in Budapest." "Damn, even I almost believed it." Marcus clapped my shoulder. "Don't screw this up." "Not planning to." A speedboat waited at the pier. A man in a white suit checked the list and, finding Istvan Kovacs's name, gestured me aboard. I settled into a soft seat, observing as other guests, wealthy men in expensive suits and jewelry, arranged themselves around me. Some arrived with escorts, bodyguards, or assistants. I'd deliberately come alone, fewer reasons for suspicion. The boat cast off. The coastline began receding. 20 minutes later, we approached an enormous yacht, gleaming with lights in the evening twilight. The Medusa lived up to its name, a snow-white beauty at least 260 feet long, 4 decks, helipad on the stern. Guards' figures visible along the rails. One by one guests climbed the gangway, passing through a metal detector frame and additional manual scanner checks. My turn. I presented invitation and passport with a slight arrogant smile befitting an eccentric aristocrat. "Your weapon, sir." The guard extended his hand. "I don't carry weapons," I spread my hands. "Not my style." The manual scanner showed nothing. Marcus hadn't lied about the composite material. They let me aboard. On the upper deck, we were met by staff in immaculate white uniforms with champagne trays. I took a glass but didn't drink. I needed an absolutely clear head. Guests mingled around, conversing quietly. The air carried scents of expensive cigars, perfume, and the barely perceptible aroma of decadence. I slowly walked the deck, assessing the situation. About 30 guests, not counting staff. Security, at least 15 men, all armed, many with the characteristic bearing of former military. 4 exits to lower decks, 2 emergency gangways. At the stern, lifeboats and rafts. And then I saw her. Vivian stood at the rail in a burgundy evening gown with a deep back cutout. Her hair was gathered in an elegant bun, exposing her neck. Beside her stood a middle-aged man in a strict dark suit, apparently the same federal prosecutor Stone. He held himself stiffly, constantly glancing around. I turned away, not wanting my wife to notice my gaze despite the disguise. Instead, I focused on another target, my brother, who at that moment was ascending a small platform in the deck's center. Ethan was in his element, snow-white suit, confident smile, perfect haircut, a true master of the situation. "Aye, aye. Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan's voice carried across the deck, amplified by a concealed microphone. "Welcome aboard the Medusa." Guests turned toward him and conversation ceased. Ethan swept his gaze over everyone, pausing momentarily on each face. Acting abilities had always been his strong suit. "Tonight you'll participate in a special auction. Here, far from prying eyes, you can acquire what no money can buy in the ordinary world." He made an effective pause. "Information, the most valuable commodity of our time." An approving murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan continued. "Before trading begins, allow me to remind you of the rules. First, what happens on the Medusa stays on the Medusa. Second, all payments are made via cryptocurrency through secure channels. Third, the auction winner receives exclusive rights to all lot information, including source materials. Fourth, and most important," he smiled broadly, "enjoy the evening. Now I invite you to the main salon where bidding will soon begin." Guests moved toward the central entrance leading inside the yacht. I waited until the main mass passed ahead, then joined the flow, keeping to the side. The Medusa's interior was stunning: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, rare wood panels. The main salon was decorated in opera house style, with an auctioneer's platform in the center and rows of soft chairs for guests. I chose a seat in the far corner with a good view of the entire hall. To my right sat a corpulent man constantly wiping sweat from his bald head. To my left, a thin gentleman with an aquiline profile, never releasing his tablet. Behind the chairs, along the walls, guards positioned themselves, two at each exit. One caught my attention, tall, military haircut, scar crossing his right eyebrow. A tiny Marine Corps pin visible on his lapel, probably head of security. Our eyes met momentarily, and I sensed professional curiosity from him. He didn't recognize me, but something in my posture or gaze caught his instincts. I looked away and began examining other guests. I recognized some: businessmen, politicians, media owners. Vivian and the prosecutor sat in the third row, closer to center. She whispered something in his ear while he smiled tensely, maintaining distance. A gray-haired man in a tuxedo ascended the platform, a professional auctioneer, judging by his polished movements. Beside him stood a technician setting up a large screen on the wall behind. "Good evening, esteemed guests." The auctioneer's voice was deep and melodious. "Tonight 10 unique lots will be presented for your consideration. You may bid using the tablets before you. To maintain anonymity, each of you has been assigned a number. Starting price for each lot appears on screen. Auction increment, 10% of current bid." He signaled the technician, and the first image appeared on screen: a photograph of a local businessman holding a hefty bundle, obviously drugs. Lot number 1, Edward Green, CEO of Green Valley Investments. Materials include video recordings and photographs of his meetings with known drug dealers, plus bank statements proving money laundering. Starting price, $50,000. Numbers on the special board began changing, displaying rising bids. Trading was lively. I watched carefully, trying to understand which attendees were particularly interested in compromising material on specific people. The next several lots followed a similar pattern: local celebrities, businessmen, mid-level politicians. Bids rose but remained within reason. This was clearly just a warm-up before the main lots. "Monsieur Cavox, isn't this a lovely evening?" My neighbor on the right unexpectedly addressed me in French. "Quite educational," I replied in the same language, maintaining the Hungarian accent. "Your first time at such an event?" His eyes studied my face attentively. "In this country, yes. In Europe such entertainments are more common." The man nodded knowingly and shifted his attention to the screen where a new lot appeared. I noticed the security chief with the scar observing our brief conversation. "Aye, aye. And now, esteemed audience, I present a special lot," the auctioneer announced after a short break. "The materials we're about to show have not only commercial but strategic value." I tensed, sensing something bad. On screen appeared an image of a luxurious living room, our living room. And in frame, myself, whiskey glass in hand, noticeably drunk, and Vivian sitting beside me on the sofa. "Please enable sound for the demonstration," the auctioneer said. I heard my own voice, slightly slurred. It was complete hell. 7 men against a company, and that asshole from intelligence gave us wrong coordinates. We were supposed to destroy a chemical weapons depot, but almost blew up a school instead. The recording continued. I was describing a completely classified operation in Syria, including agent names, target coordinates, procedural details. This was an operation from 2 years ago, known only to a handful of people in the Pentagon. I felt my fingers go numb. Vivian had recorded me, in our own home. At the moment I was most vulnerable, drunk, tormented by nightmares, seeking human warmth and understanding. The lot represents a complete recording of a former Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel's revelations about secret operations in Syria, Iran, and Afghanistan. The auctioneer continued. Materials include information about methods of penetrating secured facilities, interrogation techniques, target elimination, plus names and coordinates of active operatives. Excited whispers ran through the hall. Such information was worth millions and interested not only tabloids but foreign intelligence services. Starting price $1 million, the auctioneer announced. I saw the security chief by the far wall stir, throwing a quick glance at my brother. A self-satisfied smile played on Ethan's face. I looked for Vivian with my eyes, but she wasn't in the hall, apparently fulfilling her special assignment with the prosecutor. Bids rose quickly. 2 million, 3, 4, 5. The recording continued playing. Now I was describing a failed operation to capture an Iranian nuclear scientist. With each word, my position became more hopeless. If this recording reached the media, I'd face court-martial. If it reached foreign intelligence, people would die. The price reached 7 million when I made my decision. I needed to act immediately. I raised my hand, attracting the auctioneer's attention. "I have a technical problem with the tablet," I said with a heavy Hungarian accent. "Can't place a bid." "Someone will help you, sir." The auctioneer nodded to one of the staff. A young man in white uniform approached me. I showed him the tablet. "See, it's not responding." I tapped the screen. "Allow me, I'll." He didn't finish as everything went sideways at that moment. From one of the entrances came loud voices. Several men in Coast Guard uniforms entered the hall, weapons in hand. Guests froze. One of the women gasped quietly. Ethan quickly ascended the platform beside the auctioneer. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm." His voice sounded confident. "These are our friends from the Coast Guard. They're here to provide additional security for the event." The security chief rose from his seat and approached the newcomers, exchanging brief remarks with them. Guests gradually calmed, returning to their seats. But I understood the situation had sharply complicated. Now the yacht held an entire squad of armed men, probably corrupt or mercenaries in Coast Guard uniforms. I needed to change the plan. IV. "As you see, our security is under reliable protection." Ethan took the floor again. "Let's continue the auction. Where did we stop? Ah yes, 7,200,000 for unique military information." Guards in Coast Guard uniforms positioned themselves along the walls, 2 at each exit. All armed with pistols, some had short-barreled automatics concealed under uniform jackets. Professionals, judging by bearing and movements. One of them, a balding man with a square jaw, carefully examined the guests. His gaze lingered on me slightly longer than on others. I felt a chill of alarm. Something in my disguise or behavior had aroused his suspicion. One of them, a balding man with a square jaw, carefully examined the guests. His gaze lingered on me slightly longer than on others. I felt a chill of alarm. Something in my disguise or behavior had aroused his suspicion. Trading continued. The price for my military secret reached 9 million when the man with the square jaw began slowly approaching my seat. Casually, as if just patrolling the hall, but I knew he was coming for me. I quickly calculated options. If he just suspected me of something, better to stay put and play the role. If he'd somehow recognized who I was. No choice. I activated the smoke grenade and dropped it on the floor. 3 seconds later, the hall began filling with thick smoke. Screams, panic, people jumping from their seats. I used the chaos to change position, moving closer to the side exit. "Everyone remain calm." Ethan's voice cut through the noise. "This is just a technical malfunction." Guards tried to restore order, but the smoke grew thicker. At that moment, I noticed Ethan being hastily led out through the opposite door, accompanied by 2 guards. He was heading for the bridge. I couldn't let him escape. I used the smoke cover to slip out through the side door. Once in the corridor, I quickly oriented myself. According to the yacht schematics studied beforehand, there was a shorter route to the bridge through service areas. Making my way through corridors, I heard orders being given over the intercom about finding the smoke source and possible intruder. Time was short. At a turn, I encountered a lone guard. No time to think. Two quick movements, neck grab and precise pressure on the carotid artery. 7 seconds later, he went limp in my arms. I dragged the body into the nearest storage room and took his weapon, standard Glock 19. Moving on, I heard familiar voices from behind a slightly open door. Carefully approaching, I saw Vivian and Prosecutor Stone in a small conference room. They weren't engaged in special services, rather, having an intense conversation. Stone seemed nervous, constantly checking his watch. "Time's running out," he was saying. "The strike team's waiting for the signal." "Give me 10 more minutes," Vivian insisted. "We need to wait until they put up the Supreme Court Justice's compromising material. That's the key element." I froze. Strike team. Vivian was working with Stone. But then who were these men in Coast Guard uniforms? And what was Ethan expecting, having hastily left the auction? The situation was becoming increasingly tangled. I continued toward the bridge, trying to process the new information. If Stone really was an undercover federal agent and not just another blackmail victim, it changed the entire picture. Ahead appeared another guard. I hid around the corner, letting him pass. But at the last moment he turned, the same one with the square jaw who'd suspected me in the hall. "Hey," he reached for his weapon. I lunged forward, closing the distance to dangerous minimum. His pistol was already halfway out of the holster when I struck his solar plexus. He doubled over but didn't fall, a trained fighter. His left fist aimed for my liver. I blocked the strike and executed a wrist grab, twisting the arm. A crack. The joint gave way. The man cried out but immediately tried to reach for the weapon with his right hand. I headbutted him in the nose. Blood gushed from the broken bridge, but he continued resisting. Had to act harder, 2 powerful blows to the jaw, and the opponent finally lost consciousness. The entire fight took less than 15 seconds, but the noise could attract attention. I hurried on, knowing the count was now in minutes. 2 turns and a staircase remained to the bridge when a powerful explosion shook the ship. Lights went out in the corridor. Emergency lighting engaged a moment later. Alarm sirens wailed, drowning out panic screams from lower decks. I accelerated, taking stairs 3 at a time. The next explosion, stronger, made the yacht list. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Somewhere in the distance came the sound of breaking glass. The bridge door was locked. I shot the lock and burst inside, holding the pistol before me. "Nobody move," I shouted. 4 people occupied the bridge. The captain pressed against the radio, 2 crew members, and Ethan holding a phone between ear and shoulder while his hands rapidly sorted through documents. Everyone froze, seeing the weapon. "Step away from the radio," I aimed the pistol at the captain, "and put your hands on the panel where I can see them." The captain slowly complied. Ethan seemed remarkably calm. "Who are you?" he asked. "What do you want?" "Shut up, Ethan." I ripped the prosthetics from my face with one motion. His eyes widened in shock, recognition, disbelief, and then strange relief. "Jack, somehow I knew it would be you." He lowered the phone, always appearing at the most inopportune moment. "Most opportune for justice." I kept him in my sights. "Game's over. You'll answer for Nadia's death, for the mayor, for everything." "Nadia?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "Oh, the seamstress. That was an accident, electrical wiring." "Don't lie to me." I stepped forward. "I saw you near the boutique during the fire. You were watching." "Of course I was watching. It was my sister's business, but I didn't start the fire." He shook his head. "You think worse of me than I actually am." The ship shuddered again. Fire raged somewhere on the lower decks. I could smell smoke. "What's happening?" I nodded toward the radio. "Who was the captain calling?" "Trying to call for help. Someone blew up the engine room." Ethan looked worried but not panicked. "The ship's sinking, Jack. We need to evacuate." Nobody's going anywhere until I get answers. Where are the recordings? Where's the compromising material? On servers, in special storage on the lower deck. But it doesn't matter now, everything will burn in a few minutes. Before I could respond, the bridge door burst open. In the doorway stood a man in a blood-stained shirt, Federal Prosecutor Stone. He held a pistol. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," he shouted, aiming at Ethan. "Everyone on the floor." "Another hero," Ethan muttered. "What is this, some kind of superhero convention?" "You're under arrest." Stone ignored me, fully focused on Ethan. "You have the right to remain silent." "What the hell is going on here?" I shifted my gaze to Stone. "Who are you really?" "Robert Stone, FBI Special Agent." He finally looked at me. "I've been investigating your brother's corruption network for the past 6 months, and you, I presume, are Jack Morgan. Your wife told me a lot about you." "My wife? Vivian's working for us, became an informant after the mayor's death." Stone nodded briefly. "She couldn't tell you the truth so as not to endanger you." I felt the floor drop away, and it wasn't just the yachts list. Vivian was on the side of the law. Ethan burst out laughing. "God, what irony! You thought she betrayed you and she was saving your ass." He turned to Stone. "By the way, Agent, those guys in Coast Guard uniforms who just arrived, they're not yours." "What?" Stone frowned. "What other guys?" "Jason Harper brought his team." Ethan shrugged. "I plan to use them for muscle support when collecting additional contributions from certain guests." As if confirming his words, gunfire sounded from the lower deck. "We need to find Vivian." I stepped toward the exit. "Where is she?" "Last I saw her by the lifeboats," Stone answered. "She was helping evacuate guests." A new explosion shook the yacht, this time stronger than the previous ones. The ship listed even more. "The ship won't last more than 15 minutes, the captain said, looking at the instruments. "Lower decks are already flooded." I made a decision. "Stone, you arrest my brother and evacuate. I'll find Vivian." "Fair enough," he nodded, pulling out handcuffs. "Ethan Morgan, you're under arrest." I didn't hear the end of the phrase, already running from the wheelhouse. Chaos reigned in the corridors, smoke, screams, running people. The yacht had transformed into a sinking hell. VI. The path to the lifeboats proved more difficult than I'd anticipated. Lower deck corridors were already partially flooded. Some places required moving knee-deep in water. Smoke from the fire in the engine room hindered breathing and visibility. I collided with a group of panicking guests trying to find the exit. Among them was the same French diplomat who'd sat next to me during the auction. "This way," I shouted, pointing to the emergency exit. "There are lifeboats on the upper deck." They rushed after me like sheep following a shepherd. We fought through smoke and flames, helping each other when someone stumbled or began to panic. I remembered Vivian was somewhere here, among this chaos. "Jack," her voice cut through the roar of fire. I spotted her by an emergency exit, trying to hold the door against water pressure. Her evening gown was torn, hair disheveled, but her eyes remained determined. "Help me," she shouted. "There's a blocked compartment behind this door." I handed my weapon to the French diplomat. "Cover us." Together with Vivian, we leaned on the door. Water poured through the cracks, but we managed to push it open. A wave knocked us back, but I caught Vivian and pulled her upright. "There's no one there," I said, looking into the flooded compartment. "We need to go up." She nodded, clinging to my arm. We started climbing the emergency ladder when another explosion literally threw us against the wall. The yacht lurched sharply. Interior lights finally died, replaced by dim emergency illumination. "The hull's breached," someone screamed below. "We're sinking fast." I grabbed Vivian's hand tighter. "Don't let go." We climbed up while the ship died beneath us. Metal groaned, water roared through breaches, fire devoured upper decks. It was a race against time, and we were losing. On deck pandemonium reigned. The few remaining lifeboats were overcrowded. People fought for places, pushing weaker ones aside. Guards tried to maintain order, but chaos was stronger. The helicopter. Vivian pointed to the helipad where a rescue helicopter was preparing to take off. Ethan ordered it. We ran toward the helipad, dodging falling debris and panicking people. The helicopter blades were already spinning, the pilot clearly planning to leave without waiting. "Stop!" I shouted, but my voice drowned in the roar. Then I saw him. Ethan stood by the helicopter with Stone and 2 guards. My brother's hands were cuffed, but he was smiling. "Ah, the happy couple," he called out, seeing us, just in time for the finale. Stone looked exhausted, blood seeping through his shirt. "Harper's men ambushed us, barely got out." "Where's Harper?" I asked. "Fish food," Ethan shrugged. "Along with half his team, the rest are trying to save themselves." The yacht lurched again. We had minutes, maybe less. "Everyone in the helicopter," Stone commanded. "Now." We scrambled aboard. The pilot didn't wait for the door to close before lifting off. The yacht fell away beneath us, already half submerged, engulfed in flames. I looked at Ethan. He sat calmly, watching his empire's destruction through the window. "Not sorry?" I asked. "For what? That the game ended. All games end eventually." He turned to me. "You know, brother, I never wanted to hurt you, just wanted what you had." "You could have asked. Would you have shared?" He smiled sadly. "Would you have given me Vivian, your reputation, father's respect?" I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. "Mr. Morgan," the pilot called back, "where are we heading?" I looked at Stone. He was pale but conscious. "Closest hospital, then FBI field office." Vivian sat beside me, silent. Her hand found mine in the darkness. "We need to talk," she whispered. "Later," I squeezed her fingers, "when this is over." But we both knew it would never truly be over. Too much had been said, too much revealed. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be simply glued back together. Below us, the Medusa made its final plunge, taking secrets, evidence, and perhaps our last chance at normal life into the depths. Chapter 4: The Price of Redemption. Some say in moments of mortal danger your whole life flashes before your eyes. Not true. When our lifeboat overturned from the explosion's shockwave, I saw only black water in Vivian's frightened eyes. Just an instant, and we were back in the hell of the sinking yacht, clinging to debris, trying to survive. There were no regrets about the past, no fear of the future. Only the cruel present and the necessity to act. Perhaps that's the secret of survival in any critical situation. Don't think, just do. Don't remember, but move forward. Jack! Vivian's scream barely cut through the roar of flames and crash of collapsing structures. I grabbed her hand, pulling her from the water flooding the yacht's lower deck. No more than 10 minutes had passed since the first explosion, but the Medusa had already transformed into a floating hell. Fire devoured the upper decks, water filled the lower compartments. Between these two elements scrambled everything living, panicking guests, crew members, guards. "We need to get higher from the fire," I shouted, remembering the yacht's layout studied before the operation. Vivian nodded, clinging to my hand. Her evening gown had turned to rags, hair matted with seawater, but her eyes remained clear. No panic, no hysteria, only determination to survive. In that moment I again saw the woman I'd admired 6 years ago. We moved through the flooded corridor, gripping pipes beneath the ceiling, when we stumbled upon a body, a man in Coast Guard uniform with a bullet through his chest. Nearby, leaning against the wall and pressing a hand to his bloody side, sat Prosecutor Stone. "Morgan," he grimaced, trying to smile, "thought you'd both left this ship already." I crouched beside him. "You're wounded." "Nothing serious," he coughed, spitting blood. "Had worse, your brother slipped away from me. These pseudo-guards came to rescue him." Stone looked at Vivian with a long gaze. "Did you tell your husband?" "Not everything," she answered quietly. "There wasn't time." Tell me now, I demanded. Stone reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pistol. Back up, take it, he handed me the weapon. Vivian's been working for us this past month after the mayor's suicide. She realized the situation was out of control, contacted the FBI. Why didn't you tell me? I turned to my wife. To protect you, Vivian looked me straight in the eye. Ethan threatened to reveal my past and frame you. I couldn't lose you. A new explosion shook the yacht. Plaster rained from the ceiling, water level in the corridor rose. We have little time, Stone tried to stand but couldn't. Go, find your brother and the documents. We can't let him get away. What about you? I'll only slow you down. He pressed a magnetic card into my hand. Master key for all doors. Be careful, at least 10 of Harper's armed men remain. I understood he was right. We had neither time nor ability to transport the wounded through flooded compartments. We'll try to come back for you, I said. Stone smirked. No heroics, Morgan, just complete the mission. He looked at Vivian. You chose correctly, Vivian. He's the best of you three. We left Stone with his pistol and radio, hoping he'd contact rescuers. The probability was minuscule, but alternatives didn't exist. Aye, aye. Deck A was already completely consumed by flames. We climbed higher to the upper deck where the pre-auction cocktail had been held. Now chaos and darkness reigned. Electricity worked intermittently. Shadows of fleeing people flickered around. Ethan should still be in the wheelhouse, Vivian said, gripping the railing. The yacht had listed even more severely. Standing straight was becoming increasingly difficult. He always said that in case of problems, that's where. She didn't finish. 3 figures in Coast Guard uniforms emerged from the shadows. Leading them was Harper, the same squad leader I'd seen at the auction. Well, here's our lovebird, Harper smirked, aiming his automatic at Vivian. Traitor, and her heroic husband. I drew Stone's pistol, but 3 against 1 in tight quarters. Not the best odds, even for a Special Forces lieutenant colonel. Drop the weapon, Morgan, Harper stepped forward, or your wife dies first. I calculated options. 3 opponents, 2 standing too close together. 1 shot could only take 1. Harper held separately new tactics, but the environment, listing deck, poor lighting, unstable structures, this could be used. All right, I slowly bent down, pretending to set down the pistol. Instead, I made a sharp movement, knocking a fire hose from its wall mount. A pressurized water stream hit the 2 guards standing together, throwing them against the railings. Simultaneously, I fired at Harper but missed. The yacht lurched at the moment of firing. Harper returned fire. A short burst perforated the bulkhead inches from my head. I rolled behind a metal equipment box, pulling Vivian with me. No point resisting, Morgan, Harper shouted. The ship's sinking. Ethan's already preparing his escape route. Without him, you're all corpses here. I noticed a metal piece of plating torn off in the explosion. Excellent improvised weapon. When I say now, run for that door, I whispered to Vivian, indicating an emergency exit 30 feet from us. She nodded, squeezing my hand. I waited for Harper to approach our cover, then leaped out to meet him, hurling the metal fragment. He instinctively recoiled, raising his automatic, but I was faster. A kick knocked the weapon from his hands, the next broke his knee. Harper screamed in pain, falling to the deck. The 2 other guards, recovering from the water impact, began raising weapons. Now, I shouted to Vivian, simultaneously lunging at the nearest guard. The fight was brutal and short. Years of training and combat experience gave advantage, but the opponent was no novice. He blocked my first strike, tried to draw a knife. I intercepted his hand, twisted the wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon, then delivered a series of blows to face and throat. The guard lost consciousness, going limp in my arms. The second was already aiming at me when the deck suddenly tilted even more. He lost balance, his shot went wild. I threw the fallen comrade's knife, hitting him in the shoulder. Not fatal, but painful enough to temporarily disable him. Harper was still conscious, trying to crawl toward his dropped automatic. I stepped on his hand, stopping the movement. "Where's Ethan?" My voice sounded hoarse from smoke and tension. "Go to hell," he spat. I pressed harder on the broken fingers. Harper howled in pain. On the bridge, preparing. Helicopter," he wheezed. "He betrayed us all, promised cover and money, now abandoned us." I removed my foot from his hand. "Get out while you can." Harper looked at me with hatred. Without the helicopter, there's no chance. All the boats are gone." He fell silent for a second, then suddenly grabbed my ankle, trying to bring me down. "We'll die together, Morgan." I struck him on the head with the pistol butt, freeing myself from the grip. Harper went limp. I didn't check if he was alive. Slinging the found automatic over my shoulder, I rushed to the door where Vivian waited. Aye. One flight of stairs remained to the wheelhouse when we heard the sound of helicopter blades. So Ethan really had called for air evacuation. Smart. In dark night conditions, it was the only reliable means of rescue. "He'll get away," Vivian gasped from running. "We won't make it." "We'll make it." I shifted the automatic to a more comfortable position. We had to cross open space before the wheelhouse, a zone visible to anyone inside. I put my finger to my lips, showing Vivian to stay behind me, and began slowly advancing along the wall. The wheelhouse door was ajar. Ethan's voice carried from inside. "In 2 minutes on the pad, and no witnesses understood." I carefully looked inside. My brother stood with his back to me, holding a phone in one hand. Beside him was the yacht's captain, pale, with a bloody head. Apparently Ethan wasn't planning to take him along. "End game, Ethan." I entered the wheelhouse, aiming the automatic at my brother. He slowly turned, lowering the phone. "Jack and Vivian, what a family surprise." His voice sounded tired but still retained characteristic sarcastic notes. "Decided to say goodbye before my departure." "You're not flying anywhere," I stepped forward. "It's over. The FBI knows everything about you. Harper betrayed you. Your Coast Guard is killed or scattered. There's no way out." Ethan smirked, giving me an appraising look. "There's always a way out, little brother, for those willing to risk." He tapped the briefcase. "Millions here, enough to start a new life somewhere on islands without extradition. I could take you both with me." "To get rid of us in the air," I shook my head. "Not today." "Such distrust between family," Ethan sighed. "And we were once a real family. Remember, Jack, before father started turning you into a perfect military machine and labeled me a failure." "Don't shift blame," I kept him in my sights. "You made your choice. Betrayal, blackmail, murder." "Murder?" Ethan snorted. "What are you talking about? I didn't kill anyone. The mayor shot himself, weakling, and the boutique fire was an accident. Electrical wiring, remember." "And Nadia, the seamstress who accidentally found your flash drive with compromising material." Something flashed in my brother's eyes, surprise. "I didn't kill Nadia. Why would I? She was the best seamstress, irreplaceable for the business." He turned to Vivian. "My dear sister-in-law apparently didn't tell you everything." I looked at Vivian. "What's he talking about?" She paled. I don't know." "Oh, let's not be hypocritical in our final minutes." Ethan placed the briefcase on the control panel. "The show's ending, time to reveal all cards." He pulled a small tablet from his inner pocket. "Security camera recordings from the boutique, the night of the fire." He started the video. The shaky image showed Vivian entering the storage room with a canister in hand. Then, her quickly exiting through the service door. The timestamp showed half an hour before the first fire report. "No," Vivian whispered. This is fake." "I'm afraid not." Ethan shook his head. "The FBI already verified authenticity. Your noble Agent Stone and his team knew you started the fire. They just decided to use you to get to me." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. Vivian, is this true? She remained silent, eyes downcast. Why? My voice was hoarse. Nadia saw us, Vivian finally said. Me and Ethan, She threatened to tell you. I panicked. Panicked? I couldn't believe my ears. You killed an innocent woman because you panicked. She had a son, Vivian, Ethan added with feigned sorrow. 7-year-old boy, now an orphan. Shut up, she screamed. You set me up. You said we needed to intimidate her. You gave me the canister. But you lit the match. Ethan spread his hands. I looked at them both and didn't recognize them. The brother I once loved, the wife I trusted, two strangers distorted by greed and fear. IV. In shock, I lowered the weapon. Only for a moment, a second of weakness, a moment of shock. But that second was enough for Ethan. He pulled a knife from behind his back and lunged forward. Not at me, at Vivian. Steel flashed in the dim emergency lighting. No, I rushed to intercept, but Vivian was faster. She stepped between me and Ethan, taking the blow herself. Her eyes widened. Vivian, Ethan froze, not believing what he'd done. She slowly sank to her knees, pressing hands to the wound. Something inside me snapped. Everything accumulated over 20 years of military service, cold rage, professional ruthlessness, precise calculation, burst out. I don't remember crossing the distance between us. I only remember the sound of breaking bones when my fist crashed into my brother's face. Again and again. Ethan fought desperately. His hand with the knife described an arc, aiming for my throat. I intercepted the wrist. The knife fell, but my brother continued fighting. We rolled on the wheelhouse floor, exchanging blows, as if returning to childhood when we often fought over toys or parental attention. Only now life was at stake. You always thought you were better than me, Ethan wheezed, trying to reach a pistol lying nearby. Father made you his perfect son, and always considered me weak. You chose this path yourself. I blocked his lunge, delivering a counter strike to the liver. I protected you, always protected. Ethan used the moment and grabbed a glass shard from the floor. A swing, and the sharp edge cut my cheek. I rolled aside, dodging another strike, and found the knife that had fallen from my brother's hands earlier. A second of choice, life or death. I grabbed the knife, but not to kill. Leg sweep, throw, and Ethan was pressed against the control panel, blade at his throat. Surrender, my voice sounded alien, metallic. Never, he wheezed and jerked back sharply, crashing into the control panel. The wheelhouse glass couldn't withstand the impact. With a deafening crack, it shattered, and Ethan vanished into the dark opening, falling into the raging sea. I rushed to Vivian, still trying to stop the bleeding. Hold on, I pressed fabric to her wound. We'll get out of here. Too late, she whispered, eyes clouding. Forgive me, Jack, for everything. Be quiet, save your strength. I lifted her in my arms. She seemed incredibly light, almost weightless. The wheelhouse began filling with smoke. Fire had reached here too. Helicopter, Vivian reminded, on the roof, pad. There really was a helicopter ready for takeoff with rotors running. The pilot was waiting for Ethan, not knowing his passenger was already in the sea. Hold on, I repeated, heading for the exit with Vivian in my arms. The path to the roof through the flame-engulfed yacht resembled a descent into hell, or rather, ascent. Fire, smoke, collapsing structures. Twice the floor gave way under my feet, and only reflexes allowed me to jump aside at the last moment. The wound was mortal. I'd seen enough like it in war, but I wouldn't accept the obvious. Almost there, I encouraged her, climbing the narrow service ladder to the roof. Jack, her voice was barely audible. Stop for a minute, please. I leaned against the wall, holding her in my arms. Don't talk, save your strength. No, time, she coughed again. Want you to know the truth. I know enough. No, she gathered her last strength. I loved you at first. It was duty, feeling, of gratitude for the rescue, but then I truly fell in love. I looked into her eyes, trying to find another lie, but saw only sincerity and pain. Ethan, he found out who I was, daughter of the one you were supposed to kill, started blackmailing, first money, then help with schemes. She shuddered from pain. I was afraid you'd find out, that you'd hate me. I would have understood, the words came with difficulty. Why didn't you tell me? Cowardice, she smiled weakly. My eternal problem, cowardice and pride. The building shook from a new explosion. Time was running out. We need to go. I tried to lift her, but she stopped me. Wait. Vivian reached into her bodice with trembling fingers and pulled out a small key. Bank safe deposit box. Number 247, Meridian Bank. Everything's there. Copies of documents, conversation recordings, evidence against all scheme participants. Why did you keep this? Insurance knew Ethan would betray eventually. She coughed again, fresh blood appearing on her lips. I dragged us both into a dark vortex. Couldn't see a way out. Forgive me. SHH, I stroked her cheek. Everything will be fine. We both knew this was a lie. The last yards to the roof were especially difficult. When I carried Vivian onto the helipad, the pilot was already preparing to take off, apparently decided not to wait for Ethan. Stop, I shouted, barely audible over the rotor noise. The pilot saw us, hesitated. Panic showed on his face. He expected one person with a briefcase of money, but got a bloodied man with a dying woman. I ran to the helicopter, laid Vivian on the cabin floor, then jumped in myself. Take off quick. The machine lifted from the deck at the very moment the wheelhouse roof collapsed in flames. We rose into the night sky, watching the giant yacht slowly sink into the waves, shrouded in flame and smoke. Vivian lay with her head on my lap. Her breathing was becoming increasingly shallow. Cold, she whispered. I took off my torn jacket, covering her, though I understood the futility of this gesture. This cold, not from the surrounding air, life leaving the body. You know, her voice was barely distinguishable over the engine noise. Everything could have been different if I had been honest with you from the beginning. Everything will be fine, I repeated. We'll reach shore, find doctors. She weakly shook her head. Don't lie, not now. Her fingers squeezed my hand. You were the best thing that happened in my life. I didn't deserve you. Vivian. Forgive me, the last words were barely audible, for everything. Her eyes closed. The hand squeezing mine went limp. Breathing stopped. I sat holding my dead wife in my arms while the helicopter flew toward shore. Inside was emptiness. Not pain, not grief, not anger. Absolute nothing. VI. 6 months later, I stood at a fresh gravestone. Gray granite, simple inscription. Vivian Morgan, 1996-025. Rest in peace. No epitaphs, no verses. What could be written about a life full of contradictions, love and betrayal? The day was cold but clear. The cemetery was empty, weekday, early morning. I placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grave, her favorite flowers. I thought I'd find you here. The voice behind me belonged to Robert Stone. The FBI agent looked much better than at our last meeting. The wound had healed, leaving only a small scar on his neck. He was in civilian clothes, dark coat and scarf. Surprising you survived it all, I observed without turning. Irony of fate, Stone stood beside me. Harper found me before the yacht finally sank. We escaped on a life raft. Who would have thought? The man who tried to kill me ultimately saved my life. Where is he now? Federal prison, cooperating with the investigation in exchange for sentence reduction. Stone paused. You probably want to know about Ethan. I nodded. Survived. A fishing vessel picked him up an hour after the yacht wreck, stubborn like his brother. Stone allowed himself a weak smile. Now in custody. He's been charged with 27 counts, including extortion, blackmail, organizing a criminal enterprise, and complicity in involuntary manslaughter. With the evidence from Vivian's bank box, he has no chance of getting out before 30 years. And the others, the judge, police chief. Most arrested, some chose deals with the investigation. Stone pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. "This is for you." I took the envelope. "What is it?" "Vivian's last letter. She gave it to me the day before the auction, asked me to give it to you if something happened to her." He looked away. "I should have given it earlier, but the investigation." "I understand." I put the envelope in my inner jacket pocket. Would read it later alone. "What do you plan to do next?" Stone asked after a pause. "Good question. The last 6 months I'd existed on autopilot. Gave testimony, helped the investigation, dealt with documents, insurance, funerals. Woke up, ate, slept, functioned, but didn't live." "Don't know," I answered honestly. "Maybe return to military service. There at least you know who's enemy and who's friend." "Want advice from someone who also lost family because of work." Stone looked into the distance at rows of graves. "Don't return to where you struggled so hard to escape. Start something new." I was silent. He was right, but what exactly new could a man with my experience and trauma start? A question without answer. "Thank you for the letter," I said, extending my hand. Stone shook it. "She loved you, Morgan. In her own way, with all her demons and mistakes, but loved you. I hope you can find some comfort in that." He left, leaving me alone with the grave and unspoken words. I stood a bit longer, then turned and walked down the gravel path to the exit. At the cemetery gates I stopped, pulled out the letter, opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Several pages covered in familiar handwriting. Her last confession, last attempt to explain. I began reading and the world around disappeared. Only her words remained, her admissions, her farewell. The story of a girl who survived captivity and lost her father. The story of a woman torn between duty and real love. A story of mistakes, regrets, and ultimately redemption. The last lines imprinted in my consciousness. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll remember not just my lies and betrayal, but those moments when we were truly happy together. Because in those moments I wasn't pretending. I love you, Jack Morgan, until my last breath and beyond." I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope. My soul didn't feel lighter, but something new appeared, understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first step toward it. Ahead stretched a long road and an unknown future. I didn't know where it would lead, but for the first time in 6 months, I felt truly ready to take the first step. If you enjoyed this story, please support the author with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your emotions in the comments. Thank you.